10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, start.
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking.
This morning, more audio of the frantic call from the boat Nolan Wells was supposed to have taken to shore after celebrating July 4th with friends on a remote barrier island off the Mississippi Gulf Coast.
And what do you want to do? Do you want to be towed back?
I want to get this boat unsank and towed back, yes.
The caller told the dispatcher everyone aboard was unhurt and noted he and the passengers were young.
There are 0 adults on board. Nobody here is over the age of 21.
Documents obtained by ABC News show that boat set off for Horn Island just before 10 a.m. the morning of July 4th. Wells and his friends arrived at 11:14. For the next 5 hours, the boat was stationary until it left at 4:31 p.m. without Wells, moving at no more than 4 knots. Whatever problem the teens reported was resolved about an hour later at 5:25 when vessel regains normal operation and begins accelerating at 30 to 35 knots. Friends said they did not abandon Wells. Rather, the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources reported his friends saying Wells was in the company of an unknown female and that he chose to remain at the island. As searchers began scanning the island and surrounding waters, this email obtained by ABC News shows the preliminary information they were given, describing Wells as a black male, 6'1", 180 pounds, wearing shorts only. The Marine Patrol listed his alcohol intake as heavy. The state's autopsy, including the results of toxicology tests, is pending.
As long as we continue to remember him, his light will continue to shine through us all. Nolan, we love you. We'll continue to fight for you.
Wells was laid to rest last week. A source tells ABC News on the day of the funeral, his mother sent his friends legal notice to expect a lawsuit, instructing them to preserve evidence and not to delete anything on their phones. Nothing further from the Wells family about those impending lawsuits. Meanwhile, the district attorney has asked for patience in the investigation, saying minimal releases of information are meant to protect the integrity of the case. Officials have provided no timeline for when it will be complete. Guys.
But that family's going to keep fighting, as you know, Aaron, until they get the answers that they deserve. Thank you so much.
Yep, Aaron, thank you. Now, as we all realize, that's corporate media. And we receive information there about the problems they were having on the boat. It seems to be when they were coming home, all these problems with the boat happened. What do you think? Have you heard anything about that, Maurice? You being the lawyer on the case.
Yeah, so I've been following this closely, and the problem that I have with that rationale is that the news is just taking verbatim the word that his possible killers are giving them, right? That he wasn't on the boat. The evidence that we actually have, like you played the first part of the audio that we knew about, but there has been the back portion of that audio has been enhanced as well. So while you're waiting for the 911 operator, 911 begins recording your call as soon as you make contact. So during the time that you are waiting, like if you're hearing a tone or something like that, it's still being recorded. So they were able to enhance the noise that was in the background on the boat. And apparently these kids were frantic during that call. They're like, oh my God, you killed him, Nolan. And then they're like, what, shut up or whatever. One of them is telling them, shut the F up or whatever. And this is all before the operator comes on. So we have all of that background. So for me, their little version of the events doesn't make any sense. They don't seem credible. It seems like Nolan might have been on that boat at the time that they made the call. And here's why I think they made the call at this point. First, they gave this story that, well, Nolan stayed back with this girl that he had met that day. So they spoke to the girl, and the girl has been actually forthcoming, unlike them. The girl has said, no, she's clear. He was going back on the boat with them. There's no indication that he was staying on the island, which makes sense. Now, if he's with them, and again, another thing that we heard is that this video that was supposed to be Nolan that made sense, where it's like there's somebody saying that his phone was taken or something like that. Give me back my effing phone. It makes sense that that's Nolan. So we have other kids that are also the friends of the people who could allegedly be the murderers coming forward now and saying, no, that's not Nolan, that's me. We can't really, I mean, Nolan is not here to speak for himself. So at some point in time, we have to let the evidence speak for him, right? Like we know all of this now. So again, my original, remember when we last spoke, I said that I
Yeah.
had two theories. It could be one, either he stays back on the island and he gets killed. Two, there is an argument, it spills over to the boat and they hit him and throw him over the boat, right? So I believe that part two is actually what we're seeing play out now. Something bad happens on that boat. Nolan ends up dead, maybe after one of them possibly hit him in the back of the head. The problem is the duration of time that they took to do the autopsy. There was significant decomposition. We add that to the fact that the body, it took them 2 days to find the body, and it was floating in water for those 2 days. So it was decomposing at an accelerated rate that a normal body wouldn't decompose at. So it's hard to tell what is blunt force trauma, what's not blunt force trauma. But what would have been easy to tell is whether or not he was dead before he hit the water, right? And the way that we would tell that is seeing whether or not there's water in his lungs. But for some reason, the Mississippi coroner didn't hand over the lungs and didn't hand over the throat. So the two things that would tell us was he strangled or something like that. We don't have the throat to know that. Did he drown while he hit the water, or was he already dead? And in which case there would be no lungs and no water in the lungs. And that would tell us that this is a murder. So at least we could shift from thinking, okay, find out cause of death, to start investigating it like a murder, meaning you would start going and arresting these suspects. I mean, I think that it's unprecedented to have some people who are possibly murder suspects, and they've been out this long, free to just destroy evidence. At this point, I mean, they have enough to charge them with. If let's say this is a murder, and the lungs determine that he was killed before he hit the water, right? By the time they catch them, they deleted their social media accounts. That's any evidence of any pictures that could have been taken that day, anything like that, any motives that we could have had, that they could have had. That they had time to sit down with their mother, who's the judge, and corroborate some kind of excuse. They had time to lawyer up.
Is the mother the judge? Is the mother the judge?
One of their mothers is actually a judge, yes. And she was clear in the media that she instructed them to delete their social medias and stuff like that because she doesn't want them facing scrutiny from the public. That's what she said. But again, if you're a judge and you know that they might be suspects in the crime and you're advising them under those circumstances, I mean, under the law, that could be technically witness tampering, right?
Yeah.
Or you're at least you're destroying evidence, right? Which is a crime in and of itself. Some people can get charged a large amount of time for that if the court determines that what would have been found would likely have led to a conviction of you being convicted for murder or something like that. So I just don't like all of the unprecedented things that are happening. Okay, the mother and Ben Crump are now sending out this notice that they are going to be seeking trial. And what that is actually is if you know that someone is going to sue you in civil court and you decide to get rid of evidence, you can be sanctioned for that and charged. That's just trying to stop a fancy way of trying to stop them from destroying evidence until this is determined a murder. Because at this point, it's looking like it might be. I mean, I don't know what's going on with Georgia PD or what's going on with the district attorney's office down there, but I mean, I hope that they're doing their job. And I really strongly believe that my original theory of this case is correct.
Doc, you have any opinions about this or what you've heard?
My strongest opinion is what Reverend Sharpton said at the funeral in Mississippi that occurred not this Monday, but last Monday, was that Nolan should not be dead, that he should not be in a coffin, that is clear. He was a young man, wonderful person, a loving person. He thought he was traveling with friends for a holiday weekend. And so what happened should not have happened. And I think what Maurice is saying, I think it has a lot of credibility with me. Something happened. A young man who's not supposed to be dead is dead. And the whole circumstances are very suspicious. As Maurice pointed out, you're not supposed to destroy evidence, and their Attorney Crump and the family, with the support of Reverend Sharpton and the National Action Network, are trying to get at the truth. I agree with Maurice. I think what he's saying is he's a lawyer, and he's given us, I think, a very good analysis. Something happened, and the issue of if there's no water in the lungs, then he was dead before he hit the water.
Right.
And that is true as evidence, and they should have been on this case from the very beginning, much sooner than they have not now started a real investigation. This is Mississippi. One of the things that Reverend Sharpton pointed out is that you look at the history. As a doctor, we look at the history of the patient. We go back as far as we can, and a lot of times we find evidence from the history that is also current. And if you look at Mississippi, of course, Cheney, Goodwin, Schwerner, Medgar Evers, Emmett Till. Mississippi has an incredible racist history, and the history of racism continues. And this is an example. We want all the evidence. We want to find out what happened. But I think what Maurice is saying is very credible, and it's very suspicious that the young man was killed. And it sounds like that. Maurice mentioned some things that I didn't know about this background, that they could hear people on the boat saying they killed Nolan, and that seems like very important evidence. And these people are suspects, so it should be handled properly, legally, I'm just sorry for what happened to Nolan. Should never have happened. And we will continue to fight. I know Reverend Sharpton, the National Action Network, and Attorney Crump and the family, the mother said, we are going to keep fighting for you, Nolan, and we will. Mm-hmm. And this situation, the abuse, murder, violence against African Americans, against our people, against people of color, and so forth, it is something that is emotionally such a tragedy, so devastating, has a big emotional impact. And what we do with that impact is to fight for the person, to stand up, to keep fighting, to join hands with the family. What Reverend Sharpton said is that one of the things he said also was, let's join hands, let's come together. Mississippi, let's move forward. Mm-hmm. Let's use this as an opportunity to come together and speak for the truth and find out what really happened. That was an invitation to the people of Mississippi to come together, all of them. And, it was a multiracial folks at the funeral. As Reverend Sharpton said, he was glad that everybody, all races were represented, which I think is so important. So that's what I would say. Thank you, Maurice, for your following the case and using your legal background to help us understand some of what really happened.
Well, Graham, you being the detective in this case, between you and Maurice, we should figure it out. Right here.
My case detective, Maurice.
You mentioned something about the throat is being removed in the first autopsy?
Now, I want everybody to understand that this case is not a standalone case with a young Black male winding up dead while on a boat with a group of white people. This has happened before. It happened up in Colorado. A woman contacted the Amadou Diallo Foundation, and we were looking into a case up there. A young Black African student was murdered.
In Georgia?
No, in Colorado.
Ah, okay.
Now, understand that the system is good for withholding evidence. And you have heard of cases where DAs withheld evidence which could have exonerated the accused. It's done regularly. In the Brawley case, I was working with Alton Maddox, and they withheld evidence. He persisted and got one photograph of the body of Harry Christ in the morgue. For 10 years, his family was told that he committed suicide. Alton showed me that Polaroid photo. And I said, proceed and get the pathologist in. This is a homicide. It was a picture of Harry laying in the morgue. They took the shot from the feet up towards the head, and I can see the bullet hole in his jaw. That told me everything I needed to know. And I told Alton, he was shot at close range, but it's not a self-inflicted gunshot wound. This is a homicide. Let's get back to this young man's neck. How does his thorax wind up missing? Who is the pathologist that did the initial autopsy? Number two, if he was struck in the back of the head, we will see it in the capillaries of the eyes. He had an impact in the back of his neck, impact mark. He could have been struck. He could have been killed from that blow. And as Maurice said, you can't drown after you're dead. There would be no water in his lungs. Was that determined by the initial pathology report? What was the examination of his eyes? They took out the thorax, but they did not remove the eyes. The eyes will tell us if he was struck. That pathologist and also the man who owns the boat. They need to get on him and find out what really was going on when he called for help, stating that he had a problem with the boat. See, that gave him an hour of time. Gave all of them an hour of time to put a story together, maybe throw the body overboard, and nobody is to say anything. Bring the man that owns the boat. Give him a deal. He had no reason to want to kill this kid. None at all. This is also similar to John White's case on Long Island, when a boy set up his son on Snapchat or whatever, one of those social media things, and talking about what he wanted to do to this white girl, and her brother and some guys were furious, which led to the death of another kid. The pathologist needs to be brought in. The mother, who is the judge, needs to be brought in. All right? She needs to stand before a judicial review because she knows better than to interfere in this manner. But we saw it before. We saw it in the Brawley case. Stephen Pagonis was an assistant DA and his father was a judge. This is a pattern. You talk about patient history. This is a pattern. This is the history of the justice system in this country as it relates to people of color.
Right.
Whether you're up south or down south, it's all the same. And we need to understand, we need to have our young people understand racism is alive and well.
Yeah.
It hasn't gone anywhere. It's not going anywhere. And I'm not saying that every white person is a cracker or anything like that. But you cannot go through life thinking that everything is cool in the gang. It's not. So another thing, the voice enhancement from that telephone call. The FBI labs can do the voice enhancement and determine who was talking. The problem, we have a dysfunctional Department of Justice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have an FBI director who is whatever, I don't know what he is. So even in soliciting help in this matter, to get to the bottom of it is difficult. Michael Baden was a pathologist, well-known, blah, 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 but the guy was a scam artist. He declared that Tawana Brawley was never sexually assaulted. He had never met Tawana Brawley. He wouldn't know her if he saw her. There was a cop who was murdered. I was looking into the case while we were up there working on Brawley. A cop was fished out of the Hudson River, and Michael Baden said that he drowned. The fact was, there was no water in the cop's lungs. The cop was murdered. second police officer. Struck in the back of the head. He was a martial arts. He was a third-degree black belt, a martial artist. So when you talk about, we can't get caught up in the titles that people have. What is the intent of the individual? And who are they working with? We had the young fellow who was jogging, I mentioned last week. The man came out with a shotgun and shot him because he was up on a lot where a house was being built. And the DA is a good friend of the murderer. These are patterns, consistent patterns, and everything must be questioned. And no, they are not going to do a kumbaya moment with Reverend Sharpton in Mississippi. And so if we don't have the Justice Department, we don't have the FBI and their labs to work this case, and you know that the man on Pennsylvania Avenue, if need be, will inject himself in one way or the other, you're not going to get to the bottom of it.
Well,
Mr.
we have
Graham,
to
if
get to
I could just chime in real quick because I got to get off soon.
Yeah.
I wanted to add one more thing. You brought up a good point about the boat, that we need to contact the owner of the boat. So what we know from the audio is that these children were by themselves on the boat, right? Which makes it even more likely that they actually did decide to dump the body. Based on the panicky conversation that they were having there, I think that what we heard was actually them deciding at that moment how they're going to get rid of the body. My theory is that they called in order to provide a cover story for how he fell over the boat, right? We need to know who they called at that specific time, because that would let us know whether they had help from the outside. There's an hour where we can't account for what the boat was doing. They claimed that they were taking in water and that the boat was going to go down. And then all of a sudden, their boat just fixed itself. No one ever came to actually tell them. They were like, no, we're fine. And then about an hour later, the boat is working properly and moving freely around the island. So what I think happened was, if they made a call, somebody probably told them, hey, you're in deep whatever. You need to lawyer up as soon as you get home. But in the meantime, do not tell anybody that he was with you. Just throw him overboard and pretend he was not there. And in that case, we would want to know who the call is that came in. Like if it's the mother, then I think that that's a significant factor.
If you were in
trouble, we're all this is all conjecture again, because none of this is proven. But I'm saying that is the most likely thing that makes sense at this point. He has blunt force trauma to the back of his head. We know that. He ended up in the water. We know that. We know that we couldn't account for them for 1 hour. And we know that they were drinking. They keep focusing on toxicology here also. What they're trying to set the stage for was to say, well, he was so drunk that it's possible that he just fell over on his own because of the level of intoxication. They were drinking too. But we're also not hearing they're not painting the same narrative on these white kids that he was hanging out with. And yes, race does play a factor. If it's not them being racist and deciding to kill him based upon a white girl showing interest on him or anything like that, then it's the PD being racist on how they're handling the case, because it's a black victim and white kids involved in possibly murdering him. They're not investigating it with the same intensity that they would investigate it if it were the other way around. Like in this country, Mr. Graham was giving some great examples before, but I think one of the best examples that we have of how they treat black people when we are the suspects versus when we are the victims is the Central Park Five. It's the same exact pattern as this case right here, except the reverse. The woman is white. The woman was white. She didn't know who raped her or anything like that. She was hit in the back of the head with a rock and viciously raped, which is horrible, right? And instead of them saying, okay, well, we don't have enough to develop a suspect or anything like that, no, they flipped the entire park upside down, had everybody who was out there questioned, brought them in. They end up roping up these 5 innocent black kids who just happened to be in the park that day, didn't know anything about this jogger, punched them in their faces, beat confessions out of them, and got this bad confession that lands these kids in jail. But they didn't need like an investigation coordinator. They didn't need anybody to say, well, who should we go for? No. We know that they're in the park. Let's go get them. And this is before technology evolved to the point where everybody has a cell phone and we know whose boat was there, whose car was there, who's this. At this point, we know all of the boats that were in the bay on that day because somebody was taking a picture of that fight going on. They could easily identify, well, who's the owner of this boat? Let's track that person down. Who rented the boat at this time? Now, those people were out there, they might have seen something, let's go question them. They could have hit it with that amount of aggression, right? But again, because it's a white suspects with a black male, they're like, oh, no, let's just treat this as a suicide. Again, the O.J. Simpson case, right? Nicole Simpson died. They don't need a coordinator to say, hey, nobody else is in the house. How are we going to develop a suspect? No, they leave from the murder scene. No permission to get there, no search warrant. They jump right over OJ's property and start planting evidence. If there wasn't enough evidence there, they're like, nah, we know you did it. We're going to do the reverse here, right? So we just want half of that intensity with this investigation. If they put forward a little bit of effort, they could solve it. And then I think that if the evidence shows that there was actually water in the lungs, right, that is something that should have been divulged immediately so that
Right.
the resources, law enforcement resources, will be devoted to treating this like a murder investigation from the start. And we don't give these kids like guise of innocence, right? If it turns out that all these months later, they took that long to say, well, it turns out that he didn't actually drown and this is murder, but you gave them all this time to get rid of the murder weapon. You gave them all this time to clean the boat. You gave them all this time to get together and get a story together, right, with their judge mom, instead of separating them from the mom, putting them in different rooms so they can't conspire and come up with a story that sounds believable or something like that. Like, we've given them a whole head start. So I think that this investigation is bad the way it's been going thus far, but I think there's still enough evidence to turn things around and make them do the right thing and bring the killers to justice if it turns out that he was in fact killed.
Yes, and if he was that drunk, if he was on the boat and fell over, would you not turn around and pick up your friend?
Right.
If that was the case, you turn around, pick him up, get him back on the boat.
Exactly.
But wouldn't you call for an emergency at that time?
You would call.
Somebody fell over. Get the Coast Guard. Let's get him out of the water.
Calling for man overboard, but with the phones, we can pull the MUDs. We can pull the message units on every phone. We know who you called at that particular time. How long was it? What was the duration of the call? Especially the boy that has the mother who's a judge.
Yeah.
All of the phones, they should have the records on every call that was made at that time. Because the question is, you're out with your friends, you're having a good time. Why is everybody on the phone talking to somebody at the same time when you all together partying and having a good time on the boat? Y'all got on a boat to make phone calls? No, you're on the boat partying. You're not thinking about calling your mother and this one and that one. If you got 6 or 7 people and everybody's on the phone, what happened? Why were you all not doing whatever on the boat?
Yeah, and then what we have to worry about too is destruction of evidence. They might actually get rid of the phones now, take the SIM cards out, put them in new phones, and act like those are the phones that they were using. If they actually know that they conspired and they did a murder and are trying to cover it up, that's going to be the first thing their judge mom tells them. Get rid of those phones, smash them into pieces, take the pieces, throw them in different garbages. That's probably been done from like day 2, before the body popped up.
That was done. We know it's an indication of some foul play because your phone is registered to you. The serial number in your phone, you can change your number. All right. You get a new phone, you get your number carries over to your new phone. But we know whether or not that was the phone that you had on the day of the incident. You can destroy the phone and then say, all right, well, here's the phone. We'll know if it's the same phone that you had on the day of the incident. If you go in your phone, you can pull the serial number out of your phone. Not pull it out, but you can look it up.
Question.
If you get it right. Your name.
I got a question, guys.
Serial number is different.
Yeah, answer this question. Now, if they're trying to cover up all these details that you two were talking about, who's there to do it? Who's there to follow it like that? FBI is not going to get involved. We know that. So who's going to do it?
Well,
actually, the FBI is involved, but not to investigate and find out what happened to Nolan. As ridiculous as it may seem, the FBI is involved to investigate threats that were made to the potential murderer as a result of all of the publicity that this has generated. So yes, they're involved to help the family that has possibly killed Nolan. And it's preposterous. And I think again, from their standpoint, they have nothing to lose by getting rid of their phones at this point, which is what they're going to do. More likely, they can't get rid of the phone records that they made. They can't get rid of cell sites. We have GPS data showing where they were and where the body was likely dumped. They were probably trying to dump it far out, but didn't dump it far out enough. And so it drifted back to the shore and ended up right around where they started. But I mean, there's just too much time. At this point, you can't charge them with tampering with evidence because there is no criminal case pending. There's no murder investigation yet. But I mean, retroactively, they'll be able to. But even if they do charge them, it's better for them to not have the evidence, considering that that evidence would likely lead to some kind of conviction, cover up. If they had pictures of him on the boat while they are there, that's a good reason for them to want to delete their phone. And then we know that the kid that was found with his phone had no intention of handing that phone over. In fact, he only handed it over reluctantly after the mother tracked his phone there. The police didn't even do their job and check to see where his phone was. Did they have his phone? Then when the mother gets the phone back, they confirm that he deleted everything that was on this kid's phone. Why would you do that? And then he went to the kid's social media, deleted his Snapchats and all of that. Who does that? What kind of non-guilty person does that? And then just general friends. If you think about how friends would act if something goes wrong with a friend, the first thing you want to do is try to assist. We don't have any curiosity from these friends. They're not reaching out and inquiring what happened to Nolan. They're not following up to see if they could contact the family. Hey, how can we help? We know where he was. Here's what's on my phone. Maybe it might help. None of that. I think it's because they know that they're involved in a murder, and doing that will lead to their possible conviction. So they're trying to be as close-lipped as possible. And I think that when none of the evidence that we're seeing makes sense in conjunction with their story, then we have to look to the story that does make sense when we analyze all of their behavior. And that is that one of them is the murderer and the rest of them are accomplices. If it was done while committing a felony, like robbing this kid from his phone, even though they just took it and ran on the boat, that would technically be felony murder. And all of them would be responsible for murder in that case under the law.
Yeah. There are a lot of things that law enforcement should have done. This should have been classified as a copy case under pending police investigation. But we now are going to have to subpoena far more people than the active participants. There are people.
Guys, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Graham. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Morgan.
You know, we now have the pathologist, and that's the key question. Why was the larynx removed? Why was it removed, and what did you do with it? It wasn't the people that killed him, I should say, allegedly killed him. Or, see, because when they look at the larynx, they'll know if it was surgically removed or whether it was ripped out. So this is the question. Was it removed by someone with a medical background, or was it violently taken from his throat? Was he hit with something that ripped his larynx out? And if that was the case, when the pathologist received the body, that would be a notation. In the pathologist's report, we have a male black, approximate age, height, weight. His larynx is missing from his body. All of those notations would have been in there before they commenced the in-depth forensic work. I have had bodies. I had a pathologist ask me. There was an individual who jumped in front of a train. Part of the cheek, a good portion of the right cheek was missing. When we recovered the body, I had to go back up the tracks and remove flesh from the board that covers the third rail, because the head was laying on the third rail and there are bolts in the third rail. So as the body was hit and dragged down over the third rail, chunks of flesh were taken out by the bolts. I had to go and retrieve the flesh. I went back up the track area, retrieving the flesh, because when the pathologist says to me, "What happened? What was this?" I said, "Oh, And I have photographs of the flesh on the cover board's bolts to explain why the face was chewed up on that side. See, this is a very detailed process. It's not done in a haphazard, or shouldn't be. It should be done in detail. And one cannot theorize who committed the crime. You have to follow the evidentiary material to lead you back to the person you're looking for.
Well,
But
I don't think we're going to get that here.
If they're not doing the basics,
Well,
Yeah, they didn't, you know.
they're
they
not
didn't
going to
the
do it.
Basics. They delayed things.
All right, I just want to run this item 2. Let's talk. Let's see what the family's got to say. I just want to play this. Play item 2.
We have not, husband and I, honestly, we
Well, I want to take you out to a live event happening right now. The funeral of Nolan Wells from Mississippi is underway. His family is speaking alongside Reverend Al Sharpton and attorney Ben Crump. Let's take a listen to what they're saying.
We were asking, did you guys ever get the incident report back? We know it was an issue getting it.
No, we brought that up in our meeting, so hopefully we will address that. Won't be today, but we will address that.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ken. I'm from DFW Night Shift Crime in Dallas, Texas. Just want to offer my condolences to you. I wanted to ask you, what does honoring Nolan legacy look like for your family moving forward? Are there any foundations, scholarships, community initiatives, or causes you hope people will support in his memory?
Absolutely. This is actually something my cousin Keezy and I have briefly discussed. But of course, with everything that's going on, we want things to kind of cool down a little bit. My husband and I, honestly, we have not fully processed this. We have not fully grieved Nolan, but that is the plan, is to come up with some foundation, just honor him, but also to United Cajun Navy. Big help, boots on the ground almost immediately after I spoke with Josh Gill. So, you know, we have to remember those types of organizations in our communities and utilize them, but also give back to them. So that is our hope, that we'll be able to give as much as we've been given during this time.
Yes. Stephen Smith with the Associated Press. Is there any update to the independent autopsy that you guys requested?
Sure. And just on that last question, very good question. Christine and Elmore and Cliff Jones and Lisa Park at the office, they talk frequently, and that's one of the things she stressed at the funeral service. She wanted to celebrate his life and celebrate and define what his legacy will be. So we look forward to working to define his legacy. Nobody else is going to define his legacy but the people who knew him best.
That's right.
Yeah. As it relates to the independent autopsy, we are looking to have findings sooner rather than later. Obviously, you want stuff from the first autopsy because they had the body closer to time. We got the body almost 6 days later, Dr. Roger Mitchell. So there are limitations as to what he could do. So, you know, you do the best you can, but there are unanswered questions. So he's getting his report together. I believe it will be coming very soon. Yeah.
Let me take one. I'm gonna take 3 more.
And again, you're taking a live look here at Nolan Wells' family, attorney Ben Crump, and also Reverend Al Sharpton after his funeral, answering some questions. Of course, people have a lot of questions about this situation involving Nolan Wells, who 18 years old went missing on a 4th of July boating trip.
Well, I like to leave it there, and we'll talk more about it next week. Maybe we'll have more answers by then.
Yeah.
I know We all have, it's obvious to us what happened. More obvious to us than what we're going to find out. But we have to just let it work its way and see what happens next week. We'll talk about it again.
I just want to say the family to give condolences and compassion, to share the compassion with the family and what the mother was saying about not having fully grieved. It takes a long time, forever. The family will be grieving the loss of their son and suffering that pain always. And it was good to hear about their defining his legacy. Nolan Wells' legacy was much bigger than what happened to him, but that will be something that the world will know about him, fortunately. But they will, the family and people who are close to him, and will define his legacy, and just respect and compassion for the family who are expressing love and composure and professionalism at this very difficult time in their lives.
Yeah, Winston, I was thinking also about the larynx. A body in water. What are the fish in that area? What type of fish are in that area? I was swimming in the Caribbean and I wound up in a school of barracuda. Miraculously, I was not consumed. But as I said, looking at the larynx, was it surgically removed or was it ripped out? And they would be able to tell if it was ripped out, whether or not it was an animal that tore it out. That's another factor. But if the body was consumed partially by marine animals, bite marks, things of that nature, because it was in the water a couple of days. But we'll see how this plays out. And you've got to be you have to listen to what they say when they do the press conferences and the verbiage that they use. They have what's called double speak. And you have to understand, like when Amadou was murdered, they talked about the 41 shots. But during the trial, they mentioned, they questioned the detective, well, on such and such a day, did you find ballistic evidence? Oh, yes, we found 2 pieces of ballistic evidence, and they went on. What was the ballistic evidence they found? You wouldn't know, because they're not going to tell you, although everybody talked about 41, there were 43 shots that were fired, not 41. The ballistic evidence was bullets number 42 and 43. But they used that terminology so the jury wouldn't understand that there were 43 shots fired and not 41. I found bullets number 42 and 43. But listen to them when they're talking in these press conferences. Common term, the war theater. What do you mean a war theater? Oh, we're downsizing. What is downsizing? You're firing people, you're laying people off. You got to listen to the language and understand their tricky language. They got tricky language.
We got to talk about item 5. I want to talk about a little bit about voting. Before we go off, we only got 10 minutes. Run number 5 real quick. This is Malcolm in 64.
Why does it look like it might be the year of the ballot or the bullet? Because Negroes have listened to the trickery and the lies and the false promises of the white man now for too long, and they're fed up. They've become disenchanted. They've become disillusioned. They've become dissatisfied. And all of this has built up frustrations in the black community that makes the black community throughout America today more explosive than all of the atomic bombs the Russians can ever invent. Whenever you got a racial powder keg sitting in your lap, you're in more trouble than if you had an atomic powder keg sitting in your lap. When a racial powder keg goes off, it doesn't care who it knocks out the way. Understand this, it's dangerous. And in 1964, this seems to be the year. Because what can the white man use now to fool us? After he put down that march on Washington, and you see all through that now, he tricked you, had you marching down to Washington. Yes, had you marching back and forth between the feet of a dead man named Lincoln and another dead man named George Washington, singing "We Shall Overcome." He made a chump out of you. He made a fool out of you. He made you think you were going somewhere, and you end up going nowhere but between Lincoln and Washington.
This is African American History is American History.
I played that, that was 1964. We were all angry because after the March on Washington, you had the 4 little girls murdered in church 3 weeks after the March on Washington, 1963. That was a terrible year. 63 was a horrible year for me. I was in the Corps, I was in the Marine Corps, and dealing with all this stuff and the crackers all around me. Most of the time I was the only black in the crowd. And that year, my mother died in October, so I was really a thought. And a month after that, Kennedy was killed. So 63 was horrible. I mean, that was just, everything righteous was dying. In 64, when Malcolm spoke at that, we didn't have the Civil Rights Bill, or we didn't have much of anything. So that's why everybody was fooled and angry and frustrated, similar to the way it is today. Here we sit there and look at things like NOLAN case. Was this Emmett Till coming back? I mean, I was 14 at the same time as Emmett Till. So this horror, this Nolan Wells. Now I understand they had to get his dental records to identify the body. I mean, we never talked about that. Now what happened to this kid, to this young man? I mean, what are we going through? In the middle of a Trump, a dictator, a gangster, accused of 34 felonies and made it to presidency. What kind of nation do we have? I mean, the point is that black people have to not be frustrated like Malcolm said, and don't feel bamboozled like Malcolm said, and vote. It's so important for us to make a purpose about independents, Republicans, Democrats should all be on the spiritual side. The way to cure this whole ill is for one race, the human race. The spiritual nature of us has to come out and get out and vote. The importance of voting this year vital. It's life or death. It's the ballot or the bullet. And we can't make it with the bullet. So the ballot is all we have. And that's Malcolm. The ballot or the bullet.
There's a lot there to try to talk about. I don't want to diminish it since we don't have that much time left, but we do have a country that has taken steps forward and gone backward and taken steps forward. We've elected Barack Obama and we went backward. Now we have Trump. And, the FBI is defending, standing up for the possible killers. They're not looking for the evidence. The whole case, so we're fighting an uphill battle to try to get the evidence, to find the real truth of what happened. We know it looks like something terrible happened. He should not be dead, and it's very suspicious. Everything that Maurice and Graham were speaking about. But we do have to, I agree, we have to keep fighting, keep going forward. After 1963, then there was the church bombing. And when Kennedy gave the speech in support of the Civil Rights Act, which Johnson's ended up signing, Medgar Evers was killed, like within 24 hours. The racists, the people who want to go backward and not forward, the racists, people who are violent, etc., we know who they are. They're demonstrating themselves. They're part of the fabric of what's happening to Nolan Wells there in Mississippi. They are still there, and we're still up against them. But I believe we can organize the majority of the American people, the majority of Black people, people of color, Latino, Native American, others, progressives, as we have in the past. We have led the movement in this country for significant change, and I think we have to keep leading it. But independence has been a very important part. Malcolm X was a Black independent.
Yeah, right.
And I'm a Black independent. We're not all the same, but I agree that we have to keep fighting and going forward. We have to look at the structure. The two parties are not going to save us. The Democratic Party is not going to save us. Many of us, the majority of the American people, are calling themselves independents. When you do polls and ask them, many Black people, young people, others. So I'm not saying that, I have an easy answer or, independents vary. They're across the political spectrum. But I do think we have to keep fighting to open up the process. And I consider opening up the primaries to all voters to be part of the fight, to continue the fight for voting rights. It gives us a way of going forward, protecting voting rights and expanding voting rights. We have to expand them and include more people, because the primary in New York City determines the outcome. And 1 million people in this city, majority of whom people of color, did not get to participate. Young people and people of color did not get to participate in the primary on June 23rd. They are excluded. Their voices are not being heard. And the November election, the Democratic candidates are going to win. We know who's going to win. They're not even going to be campaigning the way they did in the primary. That election is over for New York, for who's going to be in Congress and et cetera in this city and in New York State as well. The election is done. And a lot of people didn't get to participate. You used to have to be white and a property owner. You used to have to be a white man to vote. And then we increased the franchise for women, for Black people, for women, etc., for disabled people. But now you can't vote in the primary unless you're registered in a party. That's the next exclusion of
What
people.
about
Discrimination against people who choose to be independent. That's what it is.
what happens in the general election?
You can vote, but the
Independents vote
decisions have already
Democratic?
been made. The people who are going to win have that was decided in the primary.
Well,
Who's
how
going to be
can
for Congress? The people who won the Democratic primary are going to get elected. That's who's going to get elected.
well, can't you vote in a general election as an independent?
You cannot vote for the person of your party. As an independent, for instance, I can't vote in the Democratic primary.
But you can vote in the general election. I'm talking about the general election.
Yes, you can vote in the general election, but what I'm saying is the real election is the primary. It determines who's going to be on the ballot. Democrats are there's more Democrats. People in this state and city are not going to vote for the Republican. The Democrat is going to win.
Okay.
And if you win the Democratic line and you don't get to vote in that primary, you have no choice.
In a general election, do you get to? In a general election, independents get to vote.
They do, but the decision has already been made. We know who's going to win. There's no competition.
They told me my vote was null and void. I voted in a primary, and because there was not an independent candidate, I'm denied the right to vote. So my right to vote is a federal issue. The New York Board of Elections told me that my vote was scratched from the poll. So where are my voting rights? Yes, we can vote in the basic election, but I can't vote in the primary unless there were an independent candidate.
who was running on an independent party line.
Right.
But the issue is that all voters should have equal voting rights. All voters should be able to vote in the primary and in the general election, no matter how they're registered. And all the Democratic Party, they just can say, let people who are non-affiliated independents vote in the primary. There are different ways of doing that, but the right to vote belongs to the voter, not to the parties. That's the main point. It's the voter, the individual, who has a right to vote. The parties shouldn't be running. Our money, our tax dollars, independents and everybody else pay for the elections. They're government public elections. We pay for them, but we can't vote in them.
Well, we can solve this problem if independents vote Democratic in the general election.
That's not
Just
the
make
issue.
sure that happens.
Yeah, I don't want to register. I'm an independent.
Make
and
sure that
independent
happens.
has meaning. I am not going to
Independents
register
should
in the
vote
Democratic Party.
Democratic.
So
You don't want the Republicans in.
No.
We have to talk about this
All right,
more.
so vote Democratic for the
No.
general election.
If I were a Democrat, I vote Democratic. I'm not Democratic.
Well, you're a human being and you want humans to rule. You don't want.
Winston, get off of that. Vote Democratic, vote Republican. I am neither. I am neither. But I have the right to say who should be running in a campaign. The Democratic Party doesn't run the government.
You don't have
Republican
that.
Party
You
doesn't
don't
run the
have that.
The
Now, what do you do? You don't
the
vote?
Constitution dictates elections, and everybody has the right to vote in any state-run
Well, we
election.
can't argue that point now.
I mean, I can't argue it. I got a
You
mouth.
can't argue that point now.
I'm not talking stupidness. It is a point. It's a point that's going to wind up in court. That's where it's going to wind up.
What are you going to do in November? What are
People
you going to do in
vote for who-
November?
A lot of people are not
I
gonna
want to
vote.
hear everybody's going to vote Democratic.
People are going to vote however they want, and if we were smart, we would be going after those independent voters. Independents now determine the outcome nationally of elections. And
I'm going for you two right there, and I'm asking you two independents to vote Democratic.
Why you want me to vote Democratic? Why you want me to
Because
vote
we can
Republican?
win.
Well, we're not going to vote. I don't know. People should be able to vote for whoever they want to vote for.
All right.
If a Democrat wants to vote for a Republican, they can do that in the general election. I think people. I do not support Donald Trump.
That's good. If you don't vote Democratic, you're supporting Donald
Who else am I going to
Trump.
vote for, Winston? Who else am I going to vote for? I voted for Kamala Harris. I supported
That's it.
Kamala Harris.
That's all I
I supported
wanna
Barack Obama, but I get to make that decision.
Okay.
And what I'm
Next
I'm not
year,
talking
when we
about
take
general
over the
election.
House-
I'm talking about the primary. I'm not talking about the general election. I'm talking about the primary.
All right, I have to go. I
Primary
have to
that we
go.
want to give people the right to vote in.
I got 15 seconds.
Bye.
The God in me loves the God in you, and stay tuned for more of the Gilchrist Experience.
Bye.
Dynamite. Vote Democrat this November. God bless.
Okay.